Hello and welcome to NARC Live on Wednesday the 5th of July 2023. Coming to you live from Norfolk on the east coast of England with Tammy M0TC.
Hello.
And me, David G7URP. Lovely to see you. On tonight's show, we welcome Tom ZS1AFS, who will tell us how we can find out where in the world the propagation is. We take a look back at last Sunday's Barford radio rally. And we find out what on earth this is. And if you didn't get round to sending us an entry by email, you can still do that on BATC or on Facebook. And we'll include those when we get to the competition. But we start with club news. And our annual Barford radio rally was just a couple of days ago on Sunday. And I think by all accounts, from everything I've heard, it was very successful and everybody seemed to enjoy it. And traders and buyers and meeters and greeters alike seem to like it. Let's look back at some pictures now and I'll tell you just a few facts and figures about it as well. So we had just under 300 visitors through the gate, which is about right, to be honest. We normally get between 280 and 300. And we had around 30 traders. I think you want me to dance to this or something? I didn't know it was this sort of music, Tammy, you put on this.
Hillbilly.
Yeah, it is, yes. We raised just over £400 by our raffle and donations, which is fantastic. So thanks, whatever you did. I know somebody even was selling things and all the money was going to charity. So that's a fantastic result. And all of that will be divided between our club's charity this year, Diabetes UK and Fab Club. By the way, it was also successful for our club as well financially and in every other way, I think. And we'll get more details of the finances when our treasurer has received all the bills and everything else that we've got to pay, so we can give you an accurate picture. But a very good event. I want to say a special thank you to the fantastic team of around 25 club members and friends and family who helped man the event and made it such a success. You can't do something like that without lots of people. So thank you very much. One other thing I want to just tell you about. I'm being counted down now, so this is the last slide. And that was Barford Radio Rally 2023. Now there is one thing you may have seen on the newsletter, that when I went to literally lock the back door of the village hall, there was a trolley with some power tools in them and a couple of other bits as well. I'm not going to give a clear identity just because obviously we want to make sure that the person comes forward knows what was in there. So it looked quite valuable to me. One of our team saw it being walked around Barford. Andy actually saw it being walked around. So it looks like someone bought it there, and because of where they left it outside the back door, which is not where everybody would have gone, we just think they forgot about it. Now I've brought it back home. It's living in our house, and really like someone to claim it. So if you know anybody who went to there and said, "Oh, I wish I forgot to bring what I bought home," and it involves some power tools, please get them to get in touch by the usual address, the email address, and I will arrange with them to get them back to them. But it's really quite important. Okay, next on to Club Championship Contest recent results, and Malcolm has sent us an update. NARC has so far continued to win every one of the individual local club contests in the 2023 series and currently hold a commanding lead of some 50,838 points over second place Bristol. Also, we are ahead 13,395 points over the 3A's contest group, who are leading the general clubs category section. With just 2 more contests left, congratulations and thanks go to all who've taken part for NARC and it's such a great achievement. And that's from Malcolm G3PDH, who of course leads our contesting. So well done to everybody who supports the club and gives us points for our contest, whether you operate or whether you just give us points. It's really well done to everybody. Not there yet, of course, so don't forget the last 2 contests this month. Now I'd like to talk about something that's very important. Hopefully most of you have seen the Ofcom consultation document, or at least the email about it. You may have got a direct notification from Ofcom, you may have seen it on social media, or you may have seen it on our own newsletter. The front page of the document looks like this, but it's quite complex, the URL to get to that. So if you want to find out more about that, and you should, I'll tell you a little bit about it in a minute, then please go to our website at the bottom, and then you can click on a link, and it's much easier than giving you a huge long URL for that, a web address for that document. Basically, Ofcom says, this is what the aims of this are. We are proposing to make a number of changes to the amateur radio licensing framework in the UK to make sure it meets the needs of today and tomorrow's radio amateurs. Having reviewed the framework, we think we can provide greater operating freedom for radio amateurs and make the process of getting and using a license simpler, clearer and more responsive. They are not proposing any changes to the frequency bands that amateurs can access. Now, it's quite a complex document, nearly 100 pages, but don't let that put you off, because there's a good summary at the front, which they've done. But we do feel that there's also a need for clubs to help and discuss this sort of thing. And I know also, by the way, that the RSGB are planning to produce a video and some help about explaining what all these changes mean. Why do we need to do that? Well, this isn't a given. This is not necessarily going to happen. It is a consultation document, which really means they want to hear from you. They want to hear from me, you, Tammy, everybody who's licensed in the UK. You can have a say. There's probably, I think, from my point of view, there's lots of good things, and there's a couple of things maybe not so ideal as well. So it is up to you to respond. If you don't respond, well, as my dad used to tell me, if you didn't vote, then you haven't got any right to complain. And I think it's the same with this. So to be proactive, please have a look at that document if you can. The club is going to hold a special meeting to discuss this, like a forum at CNS on the 2nd of August, Wednesday the 2nd of August. It's a normal Wednesday night, and instead of just a sort of social or anything else, we've put this in there because we think it's really important. There's still then a month or so to go before you have to consult. I think it's 4th of September is the deadline. So plenty of time. And I said, I know that the RSGB and other organisations are putting together lots of help as well to explain some of it to you. If it sounds overwhelming, I can't be bothered with that, do have a look at it. There's really a lot of changes, including whatever levels you are, increases in power level, for example, whether you're foundation, intermediate or full licence. There's some big changes, that sort of thing, and lots of others as well. So whatever your feelings on it, please have a look at it and have your say. We think it's really important that everybody in the UK has this, because this is probably going to last us quite some time. This is the Ofcom, reshaping our licence, our hobby. So it's really important. So look out. I'll remind you, of course, a lot nearer the time. The 2nd of August is a month away, really. But we will be helping you with it. So be thinking about having a look at it, getting your questions together, and then between us at the club meeting, we can have a good discussion. Now, this coming Sunday, the 9th of July, it doesn't stop all the summer activities because we're doing Radio by the Seaside. We've done this for many, many years now, apart from a little break for COVID. And this is where it is at. It's at West Runton, the traditional place where we normally meet. It's on Water Lane, but you probably know where it is. If you know West Runton, you know where it is. It's at the Cliffs car park in Water Lane. There's a cafe, there's toilets, and everything really you could want there. It only costs £4 to park all day. You don't have to bring a radio, by the way, but lots of people do, as you can see there from these pictures from last year. And everybody, of course, is welcome. We don't own that, nor does any club. And you've got, and we welcome everybody to come to it. Now, there is a height limit, and I have stressed this on the newsletter and on everything that we've published, but this is really important. If you have a tall vehicle more than 2.2 metres, you will not be able to bring it in. In previous years, they've lowered the barrier and things for us, but this year they can't do that. That's because it sets a precedent, and then they have to let other people in as well. So they have said to us, regretfully, we can't take large camper vans, the sort of big motorhome type caravans, or anything else that's over 2.2 metres. If you're not sure, please check, because that's really important. I don't want anybody to turn up and then just can't get into the car park with that. And as if Sunday wasn't enough, on Monday, the very day after, we've got the Trophy Fox Hunt. It's happening in the same place as the practice a few weeks ago. It's from Thorpe Recreation Ground from 18:30. There it is. As I've said before, there's no animals involved. We call it a fox hunt, but it's really radio direction finding. There's various people from, I think, the last one, just experimenting, finding the first signals. We suggest people arrive from about 18:30. any time really after that. The competition starts at 19:30, although it's not a race against time, so even if you're a little bit late, it doesn't matter. But the first transmission will be at 7:30, then, and that's for 2 minutes, and then after that it will be every 5 minutes afterwards, 7:35, 7:40, etc. And hopefully you'll find the foxes. It's map number 133 again, our Ordnance Survey map number 133, and we hope to see you there. If you're going, I've emailed all of the teams that took part in the friendly one a couple of weeks ago, but if you are going to take part, if you drop me an email, I'll send you some of the documentation, which is just one sheet really, just gives you some of the rules and regulations that you might want to read beforehand. It just saves time on the night. So I hope to see lots of you there on Monday night, as well, of course, the day before. We've got Radio by the Seaside. Now back to members' news. And first up, Paul G3VPT. He's got this lovely solar panel, which he actually did take to Barford. And it's absolutely ideal for a QRP station or something like that. As you can see the specification there, that's taken from the specification plate on it. You can see that, excuse me, it's nominal voltage is 16.8, but you can obviously put a regulator in there. So it's ideal to float charge a battery maybe if you're doing radio work remotely or portable. He doesn't want a huge amount for this, and all of the money that whatever he takes as a bit as an offer will go to our NARC charity. So effectively he is giving this away with just a donation for our charity. So if this interests you, if you've always wanted to do a bit of portable operating, this could be an absolutely fantastic way of topping up your batteries while you're there. It's not huge. In fact, it's 650 millimeters by 280 is the exact size of the panel, and it's all in a nice wooden frame like that. Now, if you're interested in that, contact either Paul G3VPT or me. I'll put you in touch with Paul then, and you could either, if you agree on a nominal price, you could pick it up either on Sunday at Radio by the Seaside or pick it up at a club meeting in the near future. Thanks very much, Paul, for the very generous offer of that as well. Okay, now next up we've got some news from Steve G3EVA. He was watching Countryfile, as you do, the other day, and he just thought, don't I recognise that face? Here's the picture that Steve took of his telly. Now, you can't see much of it. I know it's not, by the way, it's the face in the middle, not the one right at the bottom of the screen. Do you recognise that face? I think I do. And it was on the last Countryfile. He's looking more youthful, isn't he?
Looking very youthful.
I think it's Jim G3YLA, and he's looking even more youthful every time we see him. So there we are. That was from Countryfile, and Steve thought we'd like to see that. You can see the whole of the programme, of course, on iPlayer. Have a look at it. And finally, some really exciting news for you, and I mean that sincerely. It's about a really good new television programme. It's coming to the Yesterday TV channel. It's called the Retro Electro Workshop, and it really, I think, is going to interest you. We've looked at some of the programmes. They're going to do one on, for example, refurbishing and getting an Atari games computer to get going. Another one on a Sinclair C5. I mean, I don't know anybody now who'd have a Sinclair C5. Do you, Tammy?
I don't know. I'll just have a look in the garage.
Anyway, and lots of other things like that. And of course, a lot of it is electronics, as you can see there. Now, even better than this, being a TV programme that's starting on the 18th of July at 9 o'clock, you'll be able to, of course, watch it on Catch Up as well. It was actually filmed at the Vintage TV and Wireless Company in Millers Lane in Norwich.
Norwich.
And even better than that, one of our own members, Martin G7UGB, is the dad of Rob. There you see there on the screen now. He's a very proud dad, I'm sure, and that's his son, and it's featuring on this series. So I think if you're interested in fixing old things, this is going to be a programme for you, a series, and just think about the local connection as well. It's really wonderful. So thank you very much, Martin, for letting us know about that. We'll try and remind you a bit nearer the time, but we haven't got another NARC Live before that, so don't forget about it. 18th of July. Really good series that's going to be. That's it from me for a minute. Give you a break from me. Hand you over to Tammy to see who she's got for the little people this week.
You were then going to say what on earth, weren't you?
No, I wasn't. No. It's all written down here.
Okay, here's the little people this week.
Here's the little people.
A little bit of recreation. Have you ever wanted to play golf?
Oh, yes. I love it. Is that another motherboard?
It's something like that.
This is where I get sad and I look at what components are on it. I can't make them out really, even on our HD screen here. I think there's C42 there and there's some resistors. I shouldn't be looking at that. You're saying
no, you shouldn't be looking at that. You should be looking at the people.
That is good. That is really good, isn't it? I love the little flag as well at the front. As I always say, it is from miniature-calendar.com, a lovely Japanese website. They put a new picture like this on every day, and Tammy picks one for us. Thank you very much to Tammy and for them for the entertainment. So, what have you been doing? We've had a few bits of news, as you can see, which we've just covered, but we'd love more. I know it's 2 weeks before we meet you again, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to still get your news and updates and everything else. So please let us know. Send it to the usual address. This is it at the bottom of your screen now, radio@dcpmicro.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Now, to that competition. And we showed you this last time. We asked you, what on earth is this? Now, I really couldn't tell. I can see our guest is joining us shortly, having a good look at it. I don't know what that is. I wouldn't have known. Let's have a look and see if anybody has guessed.
I don't think anybody's guessed online.
No guesses.
No.
Oh my goodness. No, it is one of the things. We've had a few entries by email, thankfully. Steve G3VA says, is the mystery object the control console from the TARDIS?
Could
be.
We'll have to ask Wilson about that.
Yeah, good point.
Martin G7UGB, I think I remember seeing one of these in the Museum of Fashion somewhere, and I think it's a machine to measure head size for hat making, but I might be completely wrong.
Colin M0GMK says, this week's object, oh, have I got this one, is a conformateur used in hat making to measure the size and shape of the head to produce a scaled down pattern. The pattern is then used with a formulon, which creates a full-size template of the head for moulding the hat to a perfect fit.
Nev M0NFY, it looks like it could be a power rheostat for something like a fairground ride motor control.
You should have swapped those over. I should have read that one. Nick 2E0IBP says, I think it might be some kind of head measuring device for making hats. And that's it. That's all the guys said. Nobody else still guessed it. So, and the answer is...
It is.
It is. It's a head measuring device. In fact, to quote David M6DPZ, who sent it in to us, it's a Maillard Ally Conformateur head measuring stretcher, sizer, hat mould making conformateur. God, how did I get that one? And it was made in Paris, in France, in circa 1800.
It looks like that's what it should be, wasn't it? But it was sort of a trick in a way because it looks like a top hat.
Well, I suppose so, but I don't know. I think I'd have, because of the context as well of looking at it on a radio programme, I think that I still would have gone for someone like Nev or Steve and saying, you know, is it some kind of bit of technology or a rheostat? Anyway, thank you very much to David for sending it in, and thanks very much to you for entering. What delight have we got for you this week? Will you know what on earth this is? Now, there's some bits being strategically blocked out there because it would make it too easy. Do you know what that device is or what it's for? You've got 2 weeks to let us know. Send your answers to radio@dcpmicro.com by 3 o'clock at the latest on Wednesday week, and we will reveal then what on earth that is or what it's for. Good luck. Before we meet tonight's guest, just to let you know what's happening at the club this week. On Sunday at 7 o'clock, we've got the GB2RS news on GB3MB. At 7:30 on Monday, also on GB3MB, we've got the Monday Night Net. And at 8 o'clock, we've got the CW Net, the 80 metre CW Net on 3.543 megahertz. Should have mentioned, of course, as well on the Sunday, we have got Radio by the Seaside as a reminder. And on the Monday night, we've got the Trophy Fox Hunt as well. And then next week, a week tonight, on Wednesday the 12th of July, we've got a meeting at CNS School for a social and a Bright Sparks for our younger members as well. So we won't be here then, but in 2 weeks' time we'll be back here with a talk on building a remote HF station. So we look forward to seeing you then. Meantime, please keep in touch. Send us your pictures, your stories, all those sort of things. We would love to hear from you. And of course, we have this card, which we're very happy to send to anybody you would like, who could cheer them up. A greetings card, birthday, whatever, to anyone in the world. Just send us the details of who you want us to send it to. We'll add your name to ours and send it to them. And it'll bring some cheer to people. Now on to tonight's main event. And our guest, Tom Morgan, ZT, I've got this right, ZS1AFS, lives in South Africa, and he's come on now to give us a live talk all about where the propagation is. So it's good evening and welcome to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, David. I'd just like to say congratulations to you and Tammy for winning the Founders Cup. My Radcom appeared at the beginning of this week.
Wow. Oh, okay. Well, that's really nice of you to say that. That's unexpected because we haven't really told people here about that. We'll have to share that now. We'll do something more about it next time on NARC Live. But thank you very much. That's really busted. Yeah, that's right. That's really very, very kind of you, Tom. And I'm glad that the Radcom has found its way to South Africa. Thank you very much. So what are you going to tell us about tonight anyway?
Okay, well, I've called the talk Beacons Ahoy because I listen to them every day when I'm operating. And so, well, how did this practice come about is really the history of how I did it. I'd like to start by explaining how I got you in operating terms. When I became a ham in the 1980s, early 1980s, I obtained a copy of the Amateur Radio Operating Manual, 3rd edition. Hello?
Oh yeah, we're here. Sorry, yeah, we can still hear you. It's a little bit broken, I have to be honest with you, Tom. But don't worry, I think it's just the internet. But I think we'll get you okay.
Hang on, we got a bit of a problem.
Have you?
Yeah.
We've got your pictures as well, and we've got your slides. So I think Tammy, if we could show Tom's slide, maybe that will provide reassurance. So this is.
Yeah, it's not going to the next slide. That's the problem.
Oh, what your program? Try the right-hand arrow, bottom right of your keyboard. That sometimes works. Or the space bar.
No.
Are you using? No, that is unusual. And the space bar doesn't work. Are you using PowerPoint?
PowerPoint, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Not much else I can do from here.
Hang on, let's just try this again.
Okay. Well,
there we are.
We've got. Are we there? Okay. All right. Well, I'll leave it home to you. I will just mention to everybody at home, of course, as always, this is live, as you can see, and that means that you can ask comments, make comments, or ask questions for Tom, and we'll read them to him at the end. But back to you, Tom.
Okay. Sorry about that. Just that. Anyway, this Amateur Radio Operating Manual is the 3rd edition. It's by R.J. Eckersley, G4 Fox Tango Juliet, and others, of course. And I noticed his particulars were withheld in the core book that I used to have. Anyway, as a primer for ham radio, it knocks spots off a few later operating manuals, and not least of all because it doesn't have a long list of websites listed at the end of each chapter. Yes, I know it's before we had internet, but that doesn't excuse information explaining fundamentals, because the reader may not have the experience and knowledge of a long-time DXer. Of course, there was a chapter dealt with DX working, and there were 5 diagrams for October. That's on pages 40, 45 to 45, giving a commentary explaining where signals should come from. And they are GMT related, so there was 600, 800, 1200, 1600, and 2000 GMT. The chosen example is 0600 in the morning. And yes, these are the best possible indications, but the commentary on the diagrams gives advice on where your signals should reach. Now, I'm not going to dwell on that, except to say it was very instructive. And the contours were based on a sunspot number of 100. And also it should match the efficient antennas that were needed to work out the predictions were fairly close. The problem is that they were the best possible signal report you get. Now, there was just one small problem for me. I'd been operating a maritime mobile for several years, and then I started operating in South Africa about 6 months a year. Now, apparently, nobody published any research on the DX operating from ZS. Well, at least I never found any operator that knew anything about what I was talking. So there was a bigger problem. People living in other continents hardly ever point their beam to Africa, unless they are looking for a specific de-expedition, or maybe they have a sked with somebody. However, in the manual, there was a small section on the North California DX Foundation beacons, and that was my starting point. Initially, my station only sported a vertical on a large tin roof. Since then, I've graduated to 2 towers and Yagis from 40 meters to 10 meters. I should point out, by the way, all my talks are scripted, so I don't go off at a tangent, as apparently I'm prone to do. And I can always repeat something if asked.
Thank you.
Anyway, the question that I and everybody wants to know is, where do I find the DX reception, or how do I know where DX reception is? And for the more fortunate, how do I know where to point my beam? Well, in essence, they're the same question, and all hams want to know which far off places can hear them. That's one of the aspects of Whisper, PSK recorder, reverse beacon network, and FT8 that make them so popular. For hams in the UK, working around Europe is only challenging when those interested in DX will know there has to be propagation to that region. So how can you actually tell in real time when you were sitting in front of your rig? I hope when you see the video at the end of this presentation, you will have another way to identify which direction propagation lies and on which HF band. Of course, one way is to scan the bands for signals and then try to call the DX station. And that's what hams used to do. Some would monitor DXpedition's published list of frequencies. Pre-internet, they were always in magazines like Radcom, CQ magazine, and all the others. And they're still keen DXers who subscribe to Bernie's Daily DX. Nowadays, several operators are glued to the cluster, but that can only give you a fraction of the stations on the air. Now, recently, there have been many FT8, FT4 days. And what's quite interesting sometimes is whilst working on pile-up, my call won't appear. And at other times, only after I've gone QRT. And David did allude to it, that our station call sign and special call, permanent call, is Zulu Tango 1 Tango. Anyway, back to the plot. There was what appears to be a simple method that's been around a lot longer than all the internet technical wonders, and it was revolutionary in its inception and has been the biggest contribution to hams that are interested in chasing DX for almost half a century. In 1972, the North Californian DX Foundation Board decided they wanted to expand their operation in a scientific way. Wanted to go further than just assisting DXpeditions with equipment and support. And you think about it, man had landed on the moon and hams were still chasing DX the hard way. Well, eventually they approached their scientific advisor, and he was at Stanford University. Well, Mike had a friend who was working with floating maritime beacons that gave out radio signals. This was part of a project of search and rescue. And the plan was the floating beacons were going to be used to monitor currents in the Alaskan waters to give emergency services data to enable them to track drifting vessels that were in difficulty. Okay, you say, well, how does this relate to amateur radio? Well, first of all, Mike arranged for one of the beacons to be transmitting on 20 meters. It was being tested in Washington, D.C., and to be switched on them to listen. The foundation members were all on 2 meters listening for it so they could speak to each other. The 25-watt transmission was heard well, and even the 1 watt signal was copyable. So the idea was formed. Beacons running on 20 meters, 14100 megahertz around the world would contribute to scientific knowledge and be available for operators to hear. There was just one big snag. Each beacon cost at that time about 25,000 US dollars, approximately 130,000 pounds today, and that was well outside the foundation's budget. So where did they go from there? And the board turned to hams that had worked on Oscar 1 to 4, and Chuck Towns K6 Lima Fox Hotel was probably the principal one. And surprisingly, after a short session of meetings, they came up with a unique but brilliant idea. Well, I think it's brilliant. It would be a worldwide beacon system where each beacon transmitted for 1 minute in sequence using the same message format. Mike made a very innovative suggestion that each beacon's transmission sequence would be lowered in 10 dB steps in the final stages to check the propagation. But then came the reality. Who was going to design and build these beacons? At that point, Chuck brought in Jim Winnett, his 6 Oscar Papa Oscar. He was a prestigious designer and builder of Project Oscar, as some of you older hams will remember. Well, it's all very well having the project mapped out, but there was one obvious, immediate hurdle placed in the way of operation. They needed a license from the FCC. Fortunately, Mr. Prowse Walker, Whiskey 4 Bravo Whiskey, head of amateur radio section of the FCC, encouraged the foundation and arranged them to meet groups that were planning to present papers at the World Amateur Radio Conference and at Walk 79. The foundation have recognized his encouragement as fundamental. During submissions to the FCC, the foundation had to give an undertaking, monitors 24/7, and they would supply the FCC with names and contact particulars on hams who were detailed to listen. I apologize for the internet, but this is Africa. Unattended remote operation, though, was still many, many years before coming approved. Well, how did they start? Well, the prototype became operational in 1979 in a trailer. Ish people call them caravans or something anyway. And it was overlooking Stanford University. Calls went out, mainly in magazines, for hams to send in reports of signals heard. And the uptake was very good. Now, because this was before the internet, reports were faxed or sent through the good old postal system. We need to remember that this was when using QSL cards was the only accepted method for confirming contacts. And of course, most countries had a postal system that worked efficiently. Sadly, like many countries, the ZS system has collapsed. And this is the equipment. And after 2 years of operation from California, Federation members are ready to look for potential beacon operators in other parts of the world. With the recruitment of Dave Leeson, W6QHS, designs were needed, and it was centered around a TS120 with a phasing unit designed by Mike Stahl, K6NYC. Then he was on KLM antennas. Aside, the TS120 transceivers operated 24/7 on 20 meters for over 10 years we get today. And here's the antenna, standard quarter-wave vertical. So almost immediately after the call out, Dr. Max de Hensler, HB9RS of the United Nations, Marty Lane, the famous Marty Lane, Oscar Hotel, Bravo Hotel, and other prominent ham operators managed to find locations in their own countries or organizations on 14100 megahertz since the 1980s. Okay, now this is a map of the beacons. It's an original computer drawing by Sue, ZS1AFR. She does all the graphics for our books and all the soldering at ZT1T. Now, before moving on, I'd like to say that during international RTTY contests, operators interfere with the beacon frequency 14100 CW, even though it's been part of the International Amateur Radio Union regulations for many years. And since propagation's improved, some quite objectionable operators have invaded the 10-meter allocation, mainly on the weekends, I may add. Non-beacon operation in the beacon band is against every country's regulations, and even messages posted on the cluster to desist are ignored by those people. A couple of days ago, I actually heard an SSB conversation spilling over onto the 18 megahertz beacon frequency. Anyway, let's go back to the plot. In 1984, the then Secretary of Region 2 of the IARU, his name was Alberto Chayo, and his call sign was Hotel Kilo 3 Delta Echo United. He recognized how successful the 20-meter project was, and he proposed a new development of a worldwide beacon system. The walk bands have been awarded in Walk 79, and the new name for the system was going to be called North California DX Foundation / International Amateur Radio Union International Beacon Project. That's too big a mouthful, so I'll just call it the beacons. The big step forward was that the beacons would not only operate on a time-sharing basis, but they'd operate on a band-orientated schedule. And once again, the bigger question was, who's going to design such a system and build these new beacons? Never mind solve the synchronization problem to fit in all the new transmissions. Well, they threw the ideas around the foundation until 1988. And this was when Bob Fabry, November 6 Echo Kilo, who was a retired professor of computer science at the University of California, got involved with Dave, and they worked to develop the system as it is today. There was a discussion about time duration when listening to the beacons, considering the reception period of each signal is quite far-sighted. And the foundation and the executive committee of Region 2 accepted a 12-second version of each CW message. However, Bob Fabry, who'd investigated several possibilities, realized the time span of each transmission should be 10 seconds for practical reasons. When all of the beacons are operational, there will be 18 beacons, and they will be operating over a 3-minute period. So you can see them on Stu's map there. Kenwood were very helpful. They donated 16 T50 transceivers to the new multiband project. And on each of them, there was a plaque commemorating Jim Rafferty, N6 Radio Juliet. Those of you who were around then will know he went silent key in 1993, and he was always known as Mr. Radio Shack. Well, distribution of the beacons continued from late 1995 to September 1996. And basically, each beacon signal has the same format. Call sign, 100 watts at 22 words a minute, followed by 4 DARs of 1 second descending in power. So you had 100 watts, 10 watts, 1 watt, 0.1 watts. Now, I'll remind you of the sequence later because it gives what I call an audio picture. Here are the beacon's frequencies. As you can see, additional frequencies allocated were 18110, 21150, 24930, and 28.200. And after cycling through the bands, there's a silence period. I know it took some time for this easily accessible system to be up and running, but it's still the best now system for checking the one aspect an operator can't do without, and that's propagation. In newspeak, they call it real time. The reverse beacon network might fill that space eventually. That is, if more operators are prepared to leave equipment unattended. Unfortunately, for present-day hams, most computers, the login programs, have a facility that allows operators to monitor the propagation in two ways. The first is concentrating on a particular band like this. The snapshot shows Madeira as the active beacon, and that's the one in blue in the center of the picture. Scanning one band means changing an azimuth for those with directional antennas, and this is not always a simple requirement. Of course, many operators with directional antennas like V-beams would probably be only listening on a particular spread of bearings, unless, of course, they have an omnidirectional antenna available. And the second option is when concentrating on a specific area, one beacon. Then the transceiver needs to hop from band to band, and then the transceiver needs to hop from band to band and possibly antenna to antenna to follow the transmissions. Now with CAT, it's easily done. I apologize again for the internet. I think it just come back much better. So you're using CAT to monitor the one beacons from band to band. Now the two slides are on the loader 32 that I use. But if you want a standalone version, a Pharos by Victor Echo 3 Afri software. There we are. Our internet obviously is quite slow today. There are more URLs on the website of the foundation, but we'll come to that later. With the upturn of this, well, whilst I'm doing this, maybe you'd like to write down the frequencies of the beacon. Do you want to go back to that, Sue? Keep going back to them. That's right. I'll put that up there because you may want to write those down. I don't know. With the upturn of propagation, this facility enabled me to respond to a 17-meter and 12-meter request for a QSO from Yankee Bravo 4 Fox Echo. Now, I asked Freddie on email to listen for the ZS beacon on 17 meters, and I would listen to the Victor radio beacon in Hong Kong. When propagation was good, I heard the beacon, I emailed him, and we had our sched. The following day, listening for the beacons on 12 meters, and with the beam pointing east, I could just hear the Victor Radio 2 Bravo beacon when I was called by Victor Oscar 1 FOG. Eventually, with him pointing to Europe and me pointing north, we had a catch-up QSO, but by then, the beacon was coming in quite well. And an email later, the 12-meter QSO with Yankee Bravo Fox Echo was completed with pleasantries as well as reports. I'm very lucky that I can actually monitor two different bands. Having filters avoids wiping out the other radio, but I can still only manage one contest band and one walk band simultaneously using Yagis. Now, I know propagation goes in cycles, so I'd like to remind you of the words of John Troster, Whiskey 6, India Sierra, Quebec, and he was involved with the Beacon Project. This was written in 1994, and some would say it's an echo from the past. It's a quote from the CQ magazine, CQ Almanac in 1997. We are grateful to the universities, national societies, and individuals who have volunteered to operate the beacons in this expanded network, and it'll be interesting to monitor the beacons during the increase in HF band activity as the sunspots cycle passes through its minimum and begins to climb back to DX glory. Before running the video, so if we go back a bit, I think. Before running the video, I'd like to tell you how I came by the pictures of the prototype beacon. It'll also give you time to copy the call signs of the beacons. After I finished writing the original Radcom article, I emailed Glenn, Whiskey 0 Golf Juliet, to ask if there was a photograph of the original. Well, he passed my request on to Ross, K6 GFJ, Golf Fox Juliet, and he's the Foundation's historian. Well, imagine my surprise. The photographs were forwarded to me the very next day. And as Ross wrote, very good lesson this, by the way, it's a good job I label all of my graphics on my hard drive. The date of the pictures was September 1987. Ross and Ron, Whiskey 6 Victor Golf, Silent Key, made a visit. These photographs can now be seen on their website, as well as the aftermath of certain disasters, not least of what happened to some of the antennas in the gales and typhoons. All ham operators are invited to support the foundation, and the contact details are also on the website. Before we come to the promised video, I hope it'll demonstrate how easy it is to know where the propagation is. Now, at the risk of repetition, I'd like to remind you of the DARs at the end of the call sign, descending power, 100 watts, 10 watts, 1 watt, and finally a tenth of the watt. What this demo should show, if you can hear it, you can work a station there or in that area. It'll be the 10-meter beacons from ZT1T, the station call sign, on the 30th of March 2022. And that was the day the talk was finally put together. You might see the times in the box on the left, but copying the CW is the important aspect. However, I have to apologize beforehand for the movement in the picture. We don't have a tripod, and the camera is about the size of a packet of fags. I should let you know that there are no signals at the start, and there's no propagation on the beacons that are highlighted in blue. Blue shows activity, and Susie will be ready to run the video. Now, before she does, I think it'll be helpful to give a spoken preview. Remember, the active beacon is blue. The Kenyan beacon is hardly audible. And recently I sent a report to the foundation confirming I'd heard the 50-meter transmission and received a reply, because the 5Z4 Bravo beacon has just been refurbished after being off the air for a very long time. You will hear the Israeli beacon, followed by a quiet Finnish transmission. There's no signal from Madeira, and then Argentina heralds in the Americas. Do you want to find them? And again. No, not. Yeah, okay. This is the video.
I'm sorry to everybody at home that we're losing some of the audio here, but
okay, well, that's about it, I suppose. But before I finish, I'd like to say three things. Firstly, if anyone wants a slide or video put up again, just ask. Secondly, and most importantly, I'd like to thank Sue, ZS1AFR, for the artwork, logical sequences of slides, and the video. And thirdly, thank you for watching. And as Bugs Bunny would say, that's all, folks. Back to you there, David.
well, I hope it isn't quite that's all, because I'm sure some people have got some questions and things about that. I've got, and actually, if I may, Tom,
Yeah.
one of our members was a professional meteorologist all of his career, and in fact a television weatherman called Jim Bacon. I can tell from your accent that you probably haven't always lived in South Africa, so you may even remember him. But anyway, he's developed a wonderful website for us in this country called PropQuest. So you might like to have a look at that at some point. It is, I believe, more orientated for the UK. That's all one word, propquest.co.uk. Anyway, it's just a thought before I forget to mention it. So for those of you at home, I'm sorry for the internet, as Tom said, was a little bit challenging at times, but I think we got pretty much everything he said. The video was a bit more difficult maybe, but hopefully you've got the gist of it. So if you've got any questions or comments about what you use, how do you use propagation tools like this? Have you done what Tom has done? Then we'd love to hear from you. Just put them on the usual places, either on BATC or on Facebook, and we'll, of course, read them to Tom. So, Tom, I mean, just as a bit of background before we have time for any questions, if there are any questions or anything from it, can I just ask you, we haven't, I don't think we've ever had a guest speaker from New Zealand before. So can I ask you what amateur radio is like? Sorry, South Africa. So can I ask you what amateur radio is like in South Africa?
Dying.
Sorry?
Dying. It's dying.
I mean...
The number of amateurs in the last 10 years has come down to, at the most, 20% of what there was. The biggest problem, apart from a few people who've got equipment like I've got, modern equipment, the salaries and pensions are negligible compared to what you have in Europe. And also, although we do have some advantages, like we can put up a 15-meter tower for antennas without any planning permission whatsoever, and in spite of the neighbours.
Really? Okay, that's definitely something, as you know, that we can't do over here. When did you move over to South Africa?
Well, that's a very interesting thing. I suppose I've been coming here on a regular basis since the beginning of the 21st century, but I've been back and forth and did quite some water sailing and so on. We've been permanently here, I suppose, since 10 years, I suppose.
Okay, or 10 years. Well, so you really get to know things there. So there must be some things, I guess, you miss from the UK. And I'm happy to report that for us, I think the hobby is fairly strong. I
Yes.
certainly wouldn't go as far as say it's dying, although obviously there are always challenges, because as many of the operators and many of the amateurs are older. And of course, we do lose them, and we've lost a couple of our club members just in the last couple of weeks. But hopefully we have also got some new younger people joining it. That's a challenge as well, a real challenge. But we are very lucky. We've got a group in our club called Bright Sparks, and this is specifically for young people under 18 or thereabouts who are interested in the hobby and interested in other aspects of electronics, because teachers generally now and schools don't have time to teach this sort of thing because the national curriculum is so full of other things they've got to learn. So we hope that we fill in a little bit of a gap there and hopefully encourage some youngsters, to pick up the hobby.
Well, I was one of the people who put the national curriculum into a certain area of England, and that's what I did in my last job in the UK, and it was mathematics, and the only mention of fractions in the stage one was know the meaning of half. So I hope it's got a bit better since then.
Yeah, I hope it has. I think it has. Although it's a while since I've been at school, as well as you can tell. From your talk, just looking at the tools that you use there, does that mean that you mentioned that obviously your internet is not great there, does that mean you don't generally use some of the internet tools that are there, and you do still use the beacons and the other radio techniques to find out whether propagation is good?
I just use the beacons. I sit down on there and have a listen. I work 20 meters long path lunchtime to talk to the Southern Cross net, and then I work my way down the bands from 10 back to 20. And today was absolutely dreadful. I only had a contact with 3 or 4 friends in North America, and that was on the long path over the Pacific. propagation in Europe from here today was absolutely dreadful. And I do have the cluster up, by the way, but I do find it's very North Atlantic orientated, I suppose.
Yeah. I mentioned to you a little while ago, Tom, our member that was a full-time meteorologist and TV weather forecaster, and he's just sent us a message. So this is Jim G3YLA, and he says, thanks very much for the talk, Tom. Very much agree on importance of beacons for monitoring propagation. A huge advantage when band activities are low, which is, I guess, what you're talking about today to Europe, from you to Europe.
Well, I must tell you a little story, by the way, about Jim Bacon. When we first started sailing, we had a little boat, and our daughter was quite little, and she used to stand in the hatchway of the boat and say, "My name is Jim Bacon, and this is the weather forecast."
Words almost fail me, and that doesn't often happen. Does Jim know anything about this? Should we be talking about this here?
No, but it just goes to show the impression he made on people who were sailing, and I'm very pleased that he was able to help so many people.
Absolutely, yes. And I mean, as I said, he has really gone on to continue to help people, especially in this hobby, which he loves, and a great CW advocate as well. And as I said, he's created the PropQuest, which is really quite an innovative package of software, an online tool for using propagation. It's really been wonderful. Propagation cycle 25, which I think we'll all agree is certainly with us now, and in fact some people are saying that, you know, it's going to be short-lived. Has that made a big difference to the hobby for you?
Well, not really. I always take every day as it comes, but they have had I think they've had more sunspots the last week than they've ever had recorded.
Well, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, it is very variable. As I said, you probably heard of Scott McIntosh and some of his theories. And, you know, it's a bit of a concern because he thinks that maybe the cycle is sort of towards the end of the year and early next year is going to wane out. So we've all got to make the most of these bands as they are now.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of that on the also on the internet, and if that's the guy that did the article in Radcom, it was in 2 parts, and we had a talk at Denby Dale from that. I wasn't convinced, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yes, that is the same gentleman. Yes, so we're the same as well. But by the way, Jim has just put in there in reply to what you said. He has said, "We are all Jim Bacon today." So that's lovely. Well, Tom, thank you. We haven't got any other really specific questions or anything from it, but it's a lovely, concise talk. I'm sure we did follow most of it. We had the odd little dropout, but I think everything sort of caught up in the end. So we're really grateful to you for joining us tonight. And can I thank you also to your XYL Sue there, who's been helping on the technical side to run the videos and everything else. So we're grateful to both of you for joining us tonight on NARC Live. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks very much, Tom. Tom and Sue there. ZN1, ZS1 from South Africa. I've got that wrong again, haven't I?
ZS1.
It's because I got it wrong, to be honest with you. He has a special event call, I believe. Yep, and I got it wrong on that earlier, so everything's gone wrong since then. ZS1AFS. Many, many thanks, Tom and Sue. And that's almost it for NARC Live. I'll just go over again what's happening this coming week in the club. So Sunday, it's Radio by the Seaside at West Runton. Look for details on the club's website. Also at 7 o'clock on Sunday night, it's the GB Tourist News on GB3NB. On Monday, it's the Monday Night Net at 7:30 on GB3NB. At 8 o'clock, it's the CW Net on 80 metres, 3.543 megahertz. And of course, it's also the Trophy Fox Hunt departing from Thorpe Recreation Ground. And then next Wednesday, there is a meeting at CNS School, the usual between 7 and 9:30. And we'll be back again in 2 weeks' time here with NARC Live for a talk on building a remote HF station. And don't forget to keep in touch with us. Send us your news, your pictures. If you'd like us to send a card to anybody, we'll be very pleased to do it. But that's about it from Tammy and from me. So from Tammy.
Bye-bye.
And from me, take care of yourselves. Look after each other. Bye-bye.